The drama begins with our male lead, Mr. Qin Xiao, a millionaire CEO. Then we see some beautiful girls enter the room. Mr. Xiao's manager asks them, "Turn around and take of your tops." The girls comply, but Mr. Xiao doesn't find any of them suitable. The manager then asks them all to leave. As the girls step outside, one of them says, "I can't believe Mr. Xiao didn't like a single one of us. I wonder what kind of girl he's looking for." Another girl replies, "We shouldn't discuss this here. If Mr. Xiao overhears, it won't end well for us." In the next scene, Mr. Xiao's master arrives. The manager says, "Master, we couldn't find a single girl in the entire country with the peach blossom birthmark on her waist." The master replies, "Only a girl with a vaginal peach blossom birthmark has a pure yin body. Qin Xiao, you were born with a pure yang body, and to neutralize the yang poison in your system, you must consummate with a girl who has a pure yin body. If you don't, you won't survive past 30. The next scene introduces the female lead, Nian, who is talking to her grandmother over the phone. Her grandmother, who is in the hospital due to a heart condition, says, "Don't stop going to university. It's important for your future." Nian replies, "But the tuition fees are so high, and we also need money for your heart surgery." The grandmother insists, "I'm already nearing the end of my life. I don't need surgery. You must focus on your studies." While crossing the road during this conversation, Nian suddenly encounters Mr. Xiao's car. Startled, she falls, and Mr. Xiao also gets injured in the process. When Mr. Xiao regains consciousness, he finds himself in a room. However, the yang poison starts taking effect. Then he notices Nian in the same room changing her clothes. His eyes fall on the peach blossom birthmark on her waist, just as his master had described. He goes to Nian and says, "Take off your top." Nian shocked and scared, but Mr. Xiao forcibly kisses her to suppress the Vang Noison. Furious, Nian pushes him away and beats him with a broom, leaving him out of her house. Just then, Mr. Xiao's manager arrives, and the two leave. Shortly after, Nian's grandmother opens the door, startling Nian. Her grandmother says, "I don't want to stay in the hospital wasting more money." Moments later, Nian gets a call from her university principal, who tells her, "An anonymous rich man has paid your full tuition fees, and you can now continue attending university." Nian is overjoyed at the news. In the next scene, Nian is giving a speech as the freshman representative at her university. Seeing her, some girls say, "Why did the principal choose this poor girl instead of someone beautiful to represent us?" The principal then announces, "The university's biggest shareholder, Mr. Qin Xiao, not only paid Nian's tuition fees, but also provided for her living expenses. We're truly grateful to Mr. Xiao." Mr. Xiao then walks onto the stage, and Nian is shocked to see him. The flowers in her hand fall to the ground. She quickly picks them up, hands them to Mr. Xiao and says, "Thank you for helping me. I'll pay back every penny as soon as possible." Mr. Xiao smirks and replies, "You know what I want." Nian responds, "I won't do that, no matter how much money is at stake." Mr. Xiao coldly counters, "If you refuse, how will you pay your university fees? And what about your grandmother's surgery? If that's your choice, then I'll make the announcement right now." As Mr. Xiao begins to announce something, Nian panics and stops him. In the next scene, we see Mr. Xiao talking to his master on the phone. The master tells him, "To counteract the effects of the yang poison, you must have intercourse with Nian as soon as possible. However, due to the poison, it will be nearly impossible for Nian to survive after the act." To this, Mr. Xiao replies, "All right then, start preparing for the funeral." At this moment, Nian enters the room. She hands Mr. Xiao a letter and says, "I've calculated the interest on the money you gave me, and I've written it down here. I'll return all your money soon." Mr. Xiao tears up the letter and says, "I don't want the money. I want your first time." He then offers her more money, but Nian refuses. Next, Mr. Xiao gives Nian a marriage certificate. When Nian reads it, she exclaims, "You can't do this to me." Mr. Xiao calmly responds, "Tonight you must give me your first time." Nian replies, "I won't do this." But Mr. Xiao calls his manager and orders, "Bring Nian's grandmother here immediately." Hearing this, Nian stops him and says, "Fine, I'll give you my first time, but I'm not ready yet." Mr. Xiao gives her 3 days and leaves. In the following scene, a servant shows Nian to her room. Nian goes to her room and calls her grandmother. Just then, Mr. Xiao enters the room, and he starts taking off his clothes in front of Nian because the effects of the yang poison had begun to take hold of him. He forcefully pulls Nian into his arms and lies down on the bed with her. Nian asks him, "Mr. Xiao, are you sick?" But Mr. Xiao doesn't say anything, and both of them fall asleep right there. A few hours later, Nian wakes up and gently slips out of Mr. Jack's arms. Nian calls her grandmother and asks, "Are you okay?" Her grandmother replies, "I just had heart surgery and Mr. Xiao covered all the expenses. I'm perfectly fine now." After the call, Nian thinks to herself, "Mr. Xiao secretly helped my grandmother with her surgery. Maybe he's a tough-talking but soft-hearted man." She then returns to bed and lies next to him. The next morning, Nian thanks Mr. Xiao and says, "Thank you for helping my grandmother. I'll work hard and return the money to you." Mr. Xiao tells her, "Don't worry about it." Later, a servant tells Nian about Mr. Xiao's condition. She explains, "You are the only girl in the world with a yin body, and you're the only one who can save Mr. Xiao from dying. Please cooperate with him." Nian thinks to herself, "Mr. Xiao is doing all this to save himself, but he helped me so much. I should do something for him in return." The servant then hands Nian a $1 billion card saying, "This is for you from Mr. Xiao." In the next scene, Mr. Xiao is sitting with his master. Nian tries to enter the room to meet the master, but the guards stop her. Nian pleads, "Please let me in. It's very important for me to meet the master." Mr. Xiao tells the master, "Let her in." Nian enters and sits in front of the master while Mr. Xiao watches from behind a curtain. Nian gives the master a $1 billion card and says, "I'm here for my husband. Although we're not a real couple, he has helped me a lot. He's suffering from a serious illness, so I want to exchange this $1 billion for his health." The master gives her a pendant and says, "You must accept Mr. Xiao as your husband as soon as possible. Only then will he recover fully." In the next scene, Nian is in her class when the teacher announces, "Tomorrow, our university will host a freshman dance show. All students must find their own dance partners and attend the event in formal attire. If you fail to do so, your credits will be reduced, which will affect your graduation score." In the next scene, Nian is talking to herself, feeling upset that no boy wants to be her dance partner. She thinks to herself, "Maybe I should ask Mr. Xiao if he can be my partner for tomorrow's show." Just then, Mr. Xiao shows up. Nian hands him the pendant that Master had given her. She's about to ask him to be her dance partner for the show when Mr. Xiao's manager arrives. The manager informs Mr. Xiao, "You have been invited as a special guest at the International Economic Summit tomorrow." Hearing this, Nian quietly leaves without saying anything. The manager then suggests, "I can arrange a dance partner for Nian for tomorrow's show." But Mr. Xiao responds, "There's no need. I won't be attending the summit tomorrow." In the next scene, all the students are arriving at the show with their dance partners. Nian also arrives, but the guards stop her because she doesn't have a partner. Some girls nearby start mocking her, saying, "Maybe she doesn't have enough money to buy good clothes." One of them sarcastically asks, "Does anyone want to be her partner?" All the boys refuse, and Nian, feeling hurt, walks away. Suddenly, Mr. Xiao arrives with some makeup artists. They get Nian ready, giving her beautiful clothes and makeup. In the next scene, everyone is at the dance show. Nian walks down the stairs, and everyone is surprised by how stunning she looks. All the boys start asking her, "Will you be my dance partner?" And the girls are complimenting her, "You look beautiful." But just then, Mr. Xiao starts feeling dizzy and collapses. In the following scene, Mr. Xiao regains consciousness. Then Master tells him, "Your 30th birthday is only 3 days away, and before that, you must have an intimate moment with Nian, or you will die." Meanwhile, a servant informs Nian, "Mr. Xiao's birthday is tomorrow, and because of Yang poison, he will die if nothing is done. Will you let him die after he has helped you so much?" In the next scene, Mr. Xiao comes home, and Nian has decorated the room to celebrate his birthday. She says, "Mr. Xiao, I have prepared a special birthday gift for you." Then she begins to take off her clothes in front of him. Mr. Xiao kisses her, and they begin to get intimate on the bed. But suddenly, Mr. Xiao changes his mind and leaves. After that, Mr. Xiao goes to his master and asks him, "Find a way that Nian can survive even if we are intimate." The master replies, "How is that possible?" Mr. Xiao insists, "You have to find a solution, or things won't end well for you." In the next scene, Nian receives a call from Mr. Xiao. He tells her, "Tonight, at 8 p.m., we're organizing a birthday party for my grandfather. I want you to come with me as Miss Xiao." Later that evening, Nian arrives at Mr. Xiao's grandfather's house with some birthday gifts. She is greeted by Mr. Xiao's aunt, who takes her inside, where the rest of the family is gathered. Mr. Xiao's cousin offers Nian some snacks. When Nian eats them, she realizes this is dog food. The whole family starts laughing at her and making fun of her. Suddenly, Mr. Xiao's grandfather enters and asks everyone, "Prepare a birthday banquet for me." Mr. Xiao's aunt takes Nian to the kitchen and tells her, "Crack open some walnuts." However, she adds, you have to do it with your bare hands, as it's a family rule. Nian starts cracking the walnuts with her hands, which causes her pain. At that moment, Mr. Xiao comes there and asks, where is my wife? Then his cousin brother tells him she is in kitchen with his servants. Then Mr. Xiao enters the kitchen and sees Nian's bleeding fingers from cracking the walnuts. He brings her outside and asks everyone, who told Nian to crack the walnuts? The aunt admits, I did. In anger, Mr. Xiao throws the bowl of water, stained with Nian's blood, on his aunt. Then his cousin brother steps in, saying, have you lost your mind? Are you really fighting with your family over this poor girl? He also admits, Mom only asked her to crack walnuts, but I made her eat dog food too. Then Mr. Xiao forcefully shoves his cousin brother's face into the dog food. Grandfather says, let him go immediately. Why are you fighting with your family for this wild girl? Mr. Xiao replies, this girl is my wife, and she will have dinner with us. At this point, Mr. Xiao's uncle says, this girl is not worthy of sitting at our dinner table. After hearing this, Mr. Xiao calls his manager and says, transfer all of my uncle's shares to my wife, Nian. When Mr. Xiao's aunt protests, Mr. Xiao tells the manager, transfer all of my aunt's shares to Nian as well. Then Mr. Xiao asks, is Nian now qualified to have dinner here? Nian says, I don't want to have dinner. I want to go home. Mr. Xiao then tells the servants, dismantle the dinner table. The servants goes and dismantles the table, which makes the aunt very angry. In the next scene, the master goes to Mr. Xiao's grandfather and asks, why are you so angry today? Grandfather responds, my grandson is going against his family for a poor girl. The master explains, she is not just any ordinary girl. She is the only girl in the world with a pure yin body, and she is the only one who can save Mr. Xiao. The master also tells him, Mr. Xiao asked me to find a way for Nian to survive even after intimacy. Meanwhile, Mr. Xiao is about to get into the car with Nian to go home when the manager tells him, the master wants to meet you. Then the master arrives and says, here is the cream. Apply it to Nian's vaginal peach blossom birthmark before intimacy, and she will survive. Mr. Xiao asks, are you sure this medicine will work? The master then recalls a flashback where grandfather gave him the fake medicine and instructed him to give it to Mr. Xiao, promising the master's safety in return. The master then tells Mr. Xiao, yes, it will definitely work. In the next scene, we see Mr. Xiao's aunt and cousin brother talking. The cousin says, Mr. Xiao has turned 30, but why hasn't he died yet? Could he have found a girl with a pure yin body? The aunt responds, find out more about this. Meanwhile, Mr. Xiao is applying the cream to Nian's birthmark. Nian asks, Mr. Xiao, what are you doing? Mr. Xiao replies, I'm massaging your acupuncture points. Nian then asks, are you going to divorce me after being intimate just once? Mr. Xiao answers, no, I want to do this with you forever. Nian then makes an excuse about needing to prepare for her exams and leaves. Meanwhile, Mr. Xiao's cousin finds out that Nian is the girl with the pure yin body. He tells his aunt, if Mr. Xiao doesn't die, how will we get the all property? I'll have to kill both of them myself. In the next scene, a waiter mixes poison in the wine and serves it to Mr. Xiao, and Mr. Xiao drinks it. As Mr. Xiao is about to leave, he starts feeling dizzy. Just then, his cousin brother arrives with some men. The waiter tells him, in a short while, Mr. Xiao will die from the poison. Mr. Xiao overhears their conversation and quickly calls his manager, asking him to come immediately. However, the cousin notices Mr. Xiao and sends his men after him. Mr. Xiao manages to escape and hides in a room. He also texts the room number to manager. Meanwhile, the manager suspects that the yang poison is affecting Mr. Xiao, so he calls Nian, who is in the exam hall. Due to her exam, she cuts the call. Mr. Xiao continues to evade the men and hides. After Nian finishes her exam, she sees the manager's message that shows Mr. Xiao is ill, so come quickly to his office. Seeing this, she immediately rushes out. She calls Mr. Xiao and says, don't worry, I'm coming there quickly. Mr. Xiao replies, don't come here, it's dangerous. However, Nian doesn't listen and goes to Mr. Xiao's office, where she encounters by Mr. Xiao's cousin brother. Nian says, let me go, or things will not go well. But the cousin brother tells her, it's not me, but Mr. Xiao who wants to kill you. He was just about to reveal everything to her when the manager arrives and captures the cousin brother. Then, Nian reaches Mr. Xiao, and to neutralize the effect of the poison, she kisses him, and they start to get romantic on the bed. Mr. Xiao notices a bruise on Nian's hand and says, "First, apply some medicine to this injury, or it will get infected." Nian goes to the bathroom to apply the medicine, and meanwhile, she receives a message on her phone from Mr. Xiao's cousin brother. The message contains a recording of Mr. Xiao and the master's conversation, where the master tells Mr. Xiao, after intimacy, it will be difficult for Nian to survive. Mr. Xiao then says, "Prepare for her funeral." Hearing this recording, Nian is shocked. At that moment, the poison starts affecting Mr. Xiao, and he comes into the bathroom trying to force himself on Nian. Nian tries hard to resist, but is unable to escape, and that time Mr. Xiao forcibly has intercourse with her. In the next scene, when Mr. Xiao wakes up, he sees that Nian is still asleep. After a while, Mr. Xiao receives a call from his manager, who informs him, "The master gave you fake medicine on grandfather's orders, which means Miss Nian's life is in danger." Mr. Xiao immediately rushes Nian to the hospital, where doctors try their best but are unable to save her. Hearing this, Mr. Xiao is devastated and blames himself for Nian's death. The next day, when Mr. Xiao wakes up, his manager informs him that Nian's grandmother has taken her body for the funeral and does not want him to attend. On the other hand, Nian's grandmother sits by her body crying when she notices Nian's fingers moving, realizing that Nian is still alive. In the next scene, 6 years later, we see Mr. Xiao visiting Nian's grave to offer flowers. He also leaves the pendant that Nian had given him. Meanwhile, we see Nian, who now has a daughter named Jia. However, Nian has gone blind, and she recalls a flashback where doctors tell her grandmother that Nian survived, but due to severe blood loss and infection, she lost her eyesight. Jia then asks Nian, "Mother, where is my father, and why doesn't he get your eyes treated?" Nian responds, "I've told you many times, you have no father." Suddenly, Nian starts feeling dizzy. She faints and falls to the ground. At the same time, Mr. Xiao's car passes by. Jia runs toward the car, shouting for help. But just as Mr. Xiao looks in her direction, Jia collapses on the ground, and Mr. Xiao drives away. Jia somehow takes Nian to the hospital, and the doctor tells her, "Your mother's treatment will require a lot of money." Jia responds, "I will pay all the fees for the treatment. Please save my mother." To raise money for her mother's treatment, Jia starts selling vegetables, and at night she starts collecting plastic bottles. And doing all this, she succeeds in earning some money, but this is not enough for treatment of her mother, Nian. The next day, while searching for plastic bottles, Jia reaches Nian's grave. Seeing Nian's photo there, she is astonished and takes the photo and the pendant. When Mr. Xiao arrives later, he finds that Nian's photo and the pendant are missing. Mr. Xiao tells his manager, "Find whoever stole these things as soon as possible." Shortly after, a man shows Mr. Xiao CCTV footage of Jia taking the photo and pendant. A little later, when Jia reaches the hospital, she wishes upon the pendant, saying, "Please pay for my mother's treatment fees." At that moment, Mr. Xiao arrives and tells Jia, "Give these things back to me right now." But Jia refuses and says, "These things belong to my mother, and I won't give them to anyone." Mr. Xiao offers Jia a lot of money in exchange for the items, and she reluctantly gives them to him. Just then, some doctors wheel Nian out in a wheelchair, but Mr. Xiao doesn't see her and leaves. Jia hands the money to the doctor, saying, "This is the fee for my mother's treatment. Please save her." However, the doctor responds, "You've offended the richest man in this city, Mr. Xiao. We don't want to risk angering him by treating your mother." The doctor then leaves Nian there and walks away. After this, Jia takes her mother, Nian, to several hospitals, but none of them agree to treat her, and every doctor forces them out of the hospital. The next day, Jia takes Nian to a lady doctor and pleads with her, saying, "No hospital is willing to treat my mother. Please, save her life." The lady doctor then says, "You have offended Mr. Xiao. Unless you can get him to sign an understanding letter, we won't be able to help." In the next scene, we see Mr. Xiao driving when Jia suddenly steps in front of his car. She pleads, "Uncle, please forgive me. No hospital is willing to treat my mother. Please sign this letter so the doctor can treat her." Mr. Xiao tears up the letter and says, "If you're telling the truth, take me to your mother." Jia gets into the car and takes Mr. Xiao to her mother, Nian. They arrive just as some doctors are wheeling Nian out of the hospital. Jia desperately pleads with them, but the doctors leave Nian outside. When Mr. Xiao steps out of the car, he is shocked to realize that Jia's mother is none other but Nian. He quickly rushes her back into the hospital. A short while later, the doctors inform them that Nian is out of danger but needs rest. After this, Mr. Xiao goes to see Nian in operation room, but Nian is still unconscious. Mr. Xiao then asks Jia, "How old are you, and where is your father?" Jia responds, "I don't have a father, and I'm 5 years old." Mr. Xiao understands that Jia is his daughter and tells her, "I'm your father." At that time, Nian regains consciousness. Jia tells her, "Father paid the hospital fees for Ute treatment." But Nian angrily says, "I've told you many times that your father is dead." Mr. Xiao realizes that Nian is still very upset with him and leaves. In the next scene, Nian and Jia are leaving the hospital when a woman approaches them and gives Jia a bottle of skincare product. She praises Nian's beauty, saying, "You're so beautiful. If you sponsor our skincare product, you'll receive 5,000 yuan from our company." Nian thinks that the money could help Jia complete her education, so she agrees. The scene then shifts to an event where many important male guests are present. The host announces, "Miss Jiang Nian will be promoting our product." When Nian and Jia appear on stage, first the guests impressed by Nian's beauty, but when they comes to know that Nian is a blind and divorced lady, all male guests start making fun of her, saying, "Is this event a garbage collection station for bringing someone like her to promote a product?" No one is interested in investing in the skincare brand. Meanwhile, Mr. Xiao's manager tells him about the skincare brand he had planned to invest in, and that the promotion event is happening now, inviting him to watch a video of the event. As soon as Mr. Xiao sees Nian and Jia in the video, he decides to head to the event immediately. At the event, all the investors demand that Nian be removed from the stage, and she prepares to leave. Just then, Mr. Xiao arrives and introduces himself saying, "My name is Mr. Hood. I loved your presentation and want to invest in the brand." Nian hesitates, saying, "I'm a divorced woman with a daughter. Do you still want to join hands with me?" Mr. Xiao replies, "Yes, I do." The host then gives them a honeymoon package as a reward. In the following scene, we see Mr. Xiao taking Nian and Jia to his house. Nian says, "I've completed the task the company gave me, and I want to leave now." Mr. Xiao explains, "We invested 10 million yuan in the skincare brand, and if our holding hands promotion fails, we'll have to pay 10 times the liquidated damages. So you have to stay with me, and we must also record our honeymoon life as part of the promotion." Nian reluctantly agrees, thinking she must do this for Jia's education. After this, the lady servant takes Jia to show her the room, and as Nian touches a few things, she feels a strong sense of familiarity. She then goes to her own room, where she finds a pendant and wonders, "How could this pendant be here?" Just then, Mr. Xiao walks in and asks Nian, "Tell me about your ex-husband." Nian replies, "I don't want to talk about my ex-husband." After some conversation, Mr. Xiao proposes marriage to Nian, but she says, "I'm no longer interested in marriage," and leaves the room. The next morning, when Nian wakes up, Mr. Xiao brings her food and tells her, "I've already sent Jia to school." At that moment, Mr. Xiao receives a message from his manager, who arrives and tells him, "We've found the medicine to fix Miss Nian's eyes," and hands him the medicine. However, Mr. Xiao thinks to himself, "If Nian's eyes are healed, she won't want to see me again, and I don't want to lose her again." So, he flushes the medicine down the toilet. Meanwhile, Nian receives a call from the school principal, who says, "Jia got into a fight with a boy. You need to come to school immediately." When Nian arrives at the school, Jia tells her, "This boy was teasing me, saying my mom is a waitress, and I'm an illegitimate child." Nian then tells the boy's parents, "Please talk to your son." The boy's father replies, "My son is not wrong. Doesn't this girl collect trash every day? Isn't she an illegitimate child?" Just then, Mr. Xiao arrives and asks, "Who is bullying my family?" The principal says, "This boy did nothing wrong. Jia is being bullied because she is from a low status and poor family." Mr. Xiao slaps the principal and then slaps the boy's father, who says, "You don't know who I am. I will ruin you." Mr. Xiao then shows him his business card, and as soon as they realize who he is, both the father and the principal kneel and beg Mr. Xiao. At that moment, the boy attacks Jia with a knife. Mr. Xiao saves Jia but ends up cutting his own hand. In the next scene, Nian is wrapping a bandage around Mr. Xiao's hand and says, "Mr. Hood, you're so kind. I don't know how to thank you." Mr. Xiao then kisses her, and they begin to romance each other. The next morning, when Nian wakes up, she realizes that her eyes are improving and her vision is becoming clearer. Today is also the day of her engagement with Mr. Hood. Some makeup artists help her get ready, and she steps out, prepared for the engagement. However, when she sees Mr. Xiao, she is completely shocked, and once again, the flowers fall from her hands. She says to Mr. Xiao, "Didn't hitting me once bring you enough peace? Why do you want to hurt me again?" Mr. Xiao tries to explain, but she runs out of the room. Mr. Xiao runs after Nian, grabs her hand, and stops her. He says, "6 years ago, I didn't know that you would die after that." But Nian, angry, asks him, "Then why did you arrange my funeral?" After this, Nian snatches the pendant from Mr. Xiao and says, "I made a wish for you to stay healthy and live a long life, but you did this to me." Saying this, she breaks the pendant and leaves. Mr. Xiao starts picking up the pieces of the broken pendant. Meanwhile, Nian is running on the road when suddenly she gets hit by a car. Mr. Xiao immediately takes her to the hospital and tells the doctor, "If you can't save my wife, things won't go well for you." Just then, another doctor arrives and tells Mr. Xiao, "Your wife's condition is very serious. She needs an urgent heart transplant, but we won't be able to arrange a donor on such short notice." Mr. Xiao then says, "You can transplant my heart into Nian." In the next scene, the doctor tells Nian, "You've had a heart transplant, so you need to be very careful." Nian asks the doctor, "Can you tell me who donated the heart to me?" The doctor replies, "At that time, your condition was very critical, but we found a suitable heart donor right here in the hospital, and that saved your life." Later, Nian and her daughter Jia go to pray for heart donors. When they arrive, they meet a man who gives them a ribbon. He explains that they need to write their wish and name on the ribbon and tie it to a tree branch. Nian then notices many ribbons tied to the tree, all with Mr. Xiao's name written on them. When she asks the man about it, he explains, "Mr. Xiao has been coming here every day for the past 6 years to make a wish for his wife." He also tells Nian that Mr. Xiao's master had tricked him into giving fake medicine, which caused his wife's death. But Mr. Xiao deeply loved his wife. Hearing this, Nian realizes that Mr. Xiao didn't intentionally cause her death. In fact, he truly loved her. After this, Nian and Jia walk outside, and we see that Mr. Xiao is already there, waiting for her. And with this, the drama ends. So, friends, if you enjoyed this drama, please subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.